produced a vast diaspora of people of African descent, defining themselves differently, yet all looking to Africa as our historical birthplace. This gathering is a tangible manifestation of our commitment to bridge the divide. Indeed, we are not merely building a partnership, we are reaffirming a familial bond. The first summit meeting generated commitments to collaborate in areas such as health, mass media, transportation, trade and investment, and in reigniting people-to-people contact. In the years since then, CARICOM and the AU have worked to bring our regions together. We have begun to operationalize the CARICOM-AU Memorandum of Understanding, which puts in place a supportive institutional mechanism to support the development of our partnership. We have launched the Health Development Partnership for Africa and the Caribbean and drafted an action plan for its first year to fulfill our shared goal of enhancing our capacity to meet health sector development needs. Yesterday, the second meeting between CARICOM and African Ministers of Health was held, concretizing the foundation for ongoing active engagement and collaboration. Similarly, CARICOM's partnership with Afreximbank is deepening with the establishment of its Caribbean headquarters in Barbados and the hosting of the Africa-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum in 4 CARICOM member states since 2022. These initiatives address priority areas for both CARICOM and Africa, and this cooperation will contribute positively to sustainable development and facilitate better livelihoods for our people. Yet there is still much more to be done. In particular, we must explore opportunities for joint advocacy on the reform of the international financial infrastructure, which we have grounded in the Bridgetown Initiative, and on the necessary responses to the destructive impact of climate change that's increasing vulnerabilities both in the Caribbean and on the African continent. This is a climate change that the Caribbean and Africa do not bear the responsibility for. We together account for approximately 6% of global emissions that cause the global warming that fuels climate change, but we are bearing an inordinate burden of the impact. With regard to the challenges of transportation between the Caribbean and Africa, there are initiatives that we need to work on, such as the Multilateral Air Services Agreement, and I look forward to further discussion in this regard. We have already seen positive action on the bilateral front, such as the joint venture between Antigua and Barbuda and Nigeria for LIAC 2020 to ply routes in the Caribbean, providing necessary inter-island connectivity for the movement of goods and people. Increased trade and investment by our private sectors remain urgent and critical if our 2 regions are to attain the development potential that is both necessary and possible. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there is undeniable potential in the growing partnership between Africa and CARICOM. Further solidifying this partnership would stand as a testament to the enormous benefits of South-South cooperation, which has become an urgent necessity given the rapid changes in the international order. It also reflects the reality of our contemporary world. Just decades ago, many of our countries fought for independence and faced great hardships in our movement for self-determination. Most are only now raising their first and second generation of people who will have no personal recollection of colonial rule. We stand today as a bloc of developing nations determined to secure a prosperous future for our people. We recognize but are undaunted by the challenges ahead of us, for we recognize that our combined strength is a formidable asset. The theme for this summit, a transcontinental partnership in pursuit of reparatory justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, is particularly timely as the international community observes the second International Decade for People of African Descent, which began in January of this year. It is also significant that the African Union has designated 2025 as the year for justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. The CARICOM Reparations Commission has been at the vanguard of this movement for more than a decade, providing intellectual leadership and global advocacy on this critical issue, including engagement with African communities in Africa and in the diaspora. This summit notes the injustice of colonial rule and the transatlantic slave trade and acknowledges that we must be unified in our demand for due compensation for the exploitative practices that traumatized and disadvantaged millions on both sides of the Atlantic. I anticipate that the mechanisms which will be established to concretize collaborative work on reparations and the declaration emerging from this summit will send a powerful and decisive message of cooperation and determination. Heads of state and government, ministers, colleagues, this assembly is guided by the Pan-African ideals set out by iconic minds from the Caribbean and from Africa, with Marcus Garvey, Patrice Lumumba, George Padmore, Jomo Kenyatta, and Kwame Nkrumah among them. As the summit commences in the Nelson Mandela Hall, here at the African Union headquarters, a short drive from the Adwa Center in central Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, I have good reasons to feel that the outcomes of this summit will, in the spirit of our ancestors, be a historic moment contributing to the deepening of CARICOM-Africa relations. Happy Africa-CARICOM Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your efforts in favor of consolidating the Africa-CARICOM dialogue. Now allow me to invite His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver his statement. Excellency.
Excellence, Monsieur João Lourenço, Président de la République d'Angola, Président en exercice de l'Union africaine, Excellence Dr Abiy Ahmed Ali, Premier ministre d'Éthiopie, Excellence Monsieur Terence Drew, Premier ministre de Saint Kitts and Nevis, Président du CARICOM, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, chefs de délégation, Monsieur le représentant du secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Madame la secrétaire générale des CARICOM, Mesdames et Messieurs, je suis très honoré de vous souhaiter la bienvenue au siège de l'Union africaine. Ce deuxième sommet Afrique-CARICOM représente un moment de communion et de retrouvailles. Au sein de la grande famille africaine de Cape Town au Caire, de Cap Gardaview à Aruba, dans les îles sous le vent, nous partageons des racines communes. Une identité plurielle et des cultures abreuvées par une histoire millénaire. Certes, des destins parfois écartelés par les injustices du passé. La traite négrière, l'esclavage et la colonisation ont bouleversé le cours de cette histoire commune. En effet, ce deuxième sommet Afrique-Caraïbes se tient sous le thème « Partenariat transcontinental en quête de justice réparatrice ». Il s'agit en premier lieu d'un appel à l'unité. C'est aussi un devoir de mémoire et de souvenir à léguer aux générations futures. C'est enfin une obligation de reconnaissance des crimes commis à l'encontre des peuples africains. La repentance seule ne suffit plus. Les revendications de réparation sont légitimes et permettent de pallier aux souffrances de nos ancêtres et de combler les inégalités structurelles actuelles. Les discriminations et le sous-développement qui se manifestent ont pour origine ce pillage orchestré de nos ressources humaines et naturelles. Par ailleurs, l'architecture de l'économie mondiale perpétue un système hérité de ces époques d'obscurantisme. C'est pourquoi la justice réparatrice n'est nullement une demande de charité ou de faveur. Il s'agit bien de rétablir un minimum de justice et d'équité pour des crimes commis. L'Union africaine et le CARICOM devront œuvrer à consolider cette solidarité pour un même combat, celui de la reconnaissance de ces crimes, de la repentance et des réparations. Il nous appartient de mettre en place un mécanisme conjoint, de coordonner nos efforts et faire avancer nos revendications sur la scène internationale. Au-delà de notre action collective liée aux réparations, il nous incombe aussi de promouvoir les investissements, le commerce, l'innovation et la recherche entre nos deux espaces. Le monde appartient aux nations productrices et commerçantes. L'Afrique et les Caraïbes représentent 1/5 de l'humanité et disposent d'un pouvoir réel d'influence et de ressources humaines et naturelles incomparables. Parlons donc d'une même voix sur toutes les plateformes internationales. Your Excellencies, let us jointly demand that former colonial powers acknowledge historic crimes, offer meaningful reparations, and dismantle structural and systemic injustice. This summit is a watershed moment and should be a turning point towards our collective aspiration. Historians will certainly put on record that from Addis Ababa, Africa and the Caribbean renewed their covenant to honor our ancestors, to uplift our descendants, and reclaim our shared destiny in freedom, justice, and unity. The African Union stands proudly and firmly with our Caribbean brothers and sisters in every step towards reparatory justice and true liberation. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your statement, as well as for your unwavering commitment towards Africa's development. It is now my honor to invite His Excellency Parfait Onanga Anyanga, Special Representative of the Secretary General to the African Union and Head of the United Nations Office to the African Union, on behalf of His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations.
Your Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency Dr. Terence Trio, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and Chair of the Caribbean Community, Your Excellency Abiy Ahmed Ali, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, our generous host, Your Excellencies, the heads of state and government, Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency Carla Barnett, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, Your Excellency Selma Malika Haddadi, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellencies, the heads of delegations of African countries and Caribbean countries, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to convey warm greetings and best wishes from the Secretary General of the United Nations, your friend, Antonio Guterres, who regrets not being able to join you here today in beautiful Addis Ababa at his second Africa-CARICOM summit. This summit is rich in historical significance, bringing together in person for the first time leaders of the African continent and those of the African diaspora in the Caribbean. It is a unique opportunity to strengthen long-standing ancestral and cultural ties while exploring new areas of collaboration, including trade, investment, tourism, science, and technology. Your joint summit also illustrates the importance that the African Union and CARICOM attach to multilateralism. Multilateralism is indeed alive, embodied in the values, principles, and work of organizations such as the African Union and CARICOM, which, in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations, seeks to enhance international cooperation, to maintain international peace and security, and to develop friendly relations among nations. At last year's summit of the future, Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a better network and inclusive multilateral system, drawing on the expertise of all humanity. Your gathering illustrates best the true spirit of a network, inclusive, and people-centered multilateral system, which indeed underpins the Africa-CARICOM Summit, for which the United Nations commends you. At this juncture, I wish to acknowledge the government of Benin for establishing a legal pathway for descendants of sub-Saharan Africans to formally reconnect with their ancestral homeland. This emblematic initiative illustrates the immense potential for deepening ties between African and Caribbean countries and people, including the African diaspora going forward. Excellencies, you are holding this important summit under the theme Transcontinental Partnership in Pursuit of Reparatory Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. In this connection, I would like to recall the statement of the Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the 30th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union, held in February this year here in Addis Ababa, in which he said, and I quote him, "The world must never forget that Africa," and to this I would like to add the Caribbean, "is the victim of two colossal compounded injustices. Firstly, the slave trade. The roots stretch back centuries, and the bitter fruit continues to affect Africans and people of African descent to this day. Decolonization alone in itself was not a panacea. Political independence did not free countries from structures based on exploitation and decades of economic, social, and institutional underinvestment. It is high time for reparatory justice frameworks to be put in place. Secondly, Africa and the Caribbean were under colonial domination when today's multilateral system was created, and that injustice endures." End of quote. Through your collective advocacy, this historical injustice is now widely acknowledged. The United Nations welcomes the growing consensus towards reforming global institutions such as the United Nations Security Council and the Bretton Woods institutions. The Secretary General has been and continues to be particularly vocal in this regard. Excellencies, people everywhere are hoping for a future of peace, dignity, and prosperity, which serves as a basis of common cause between Africa and the Caribbean. As the Secretary General noted, correcting age-old injustices is essential to addressing here and now challenges. And the good news is that we have many of the solutions we need, many of which feature in the Pact for the Future, adopted in September last year by the General Assembly. It will be a future that prioritizes dialogue and negotiation, ending the wars that are tearing our world apart, including by leveraging for the whole of humanity the immense potential presented by modern technologies such as artificial intelligence. It should also be a future ushering in a new era of relations between nations based on sovereignty, collective peace and security, and shared prosperity in larger freedom. Excellencies, allow me, on behalf of the Secretary General Antonio Guterres, to wish you productive deliberations. And I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Your leadership and role reinforcing the Africa-Caribbean dialogue and cooperation are deeply appreciated. It is now my distinct honor to invite His Excellency, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, to deliver his statement. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency, João Lorenzo, President of the Republic of Angola and the current Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency, Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, and incoming Chair of CARICOM, esteemed Heads of States and Government, Your Excellency, Mr. Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency, Dr. Carla, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, my dear brothers and sisters from the Caribbean community, welcome home. It is with profound honor and deep pride that I welcome you to Ethiopia, a land where history lives and the future takes root. We gather in Addis Ababa, where the call for Adwa was answered and African unity found its first home. From here, the world is reminded of a truth too often forgotten. The spirit of our nations always rises. On this ground, where history was made, victory was won not by force, but by courage, not by empire, but by unity. That triumph did not belong to Ethiopia alone. It became a symbol of resistance, pride, and shared aspiration across continents and generations. Today, we're here to build upon that legacy. We often speak of reconnection, but what we are doing goes further. We are building a relationship deliberate, purposeful, and lasting. Excellencies, the world is changing. Voices once ignored are now demanding to be heard. In this new era, we cannot speak in fragments. We must speak as one. That's why the AU-CARICOM partnership matters. It is rooted in opportunity, guided by frameworks that reflect today's reality. In a world where global challenges demand regional unity, and where regions like ours cannot act alone, there is clear alignment between us. On climate justice, our voices carry weight. In global governance, our demands are just. For inclusive growth, powered by innovation and use, our ambition converge. Across these issues, each region brings strengths. Africa brings scale, natural wealth, and boundless potential. The Caribbean brings strategic diplomacy, strong institutions, and resilient communities. Together, those strengths are multiplied. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ethiopia's past shows what is possible when unity meets deliberate action. We call this Madamar, synergy, the strength that comes when heads, hands, and hearts work as one. It is more than cooperation. It is a shared effort, a unity of purpose that turns idea into action and action into lasting change. This synergy drives national progress through connection, culture, innovation, knowledge, and unity. Connection links us. Ethiopian Airlines, Africa's largest carrier, links our continent to many corners of the world, bringing people, economies, and ideas together. Culture defines us. Our UNESCO-recognized festivals celebrate heritage, pride, identity, and creativity. Innovation drives us. Through the Green Legacy Initiative, we planted over 48 billion seedlings in 7 years, restoring ecosystems and creating jobs. Our climate resilient wheat initiative transformed imports into exports. Digital Ethiopia is opening new pathways for trade and finance. The local solutions grow our economy and strengthen self-reliance. Knowledge equips us. Ethiopian universities and leadership academies welcome students from across Africa, shaping skills, research, and capacity for the future. Unity empowers us. When Ethiopia speaks with one voice on climate, on debt, or trade, we deliver. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is proof of our strengths when we unite. Born in the heart of millions, funded by our own people, built through their labor and sacrifice, is a testament to shared vision, bold determination, and collective effort, a historic achievement for Ethiopia and for Africa. Excellencies, these forces, guided by Madamar, are the foundation for what we can build with the Caribbean. Geography may have placed us apart, but history has bound us together. Let us free ourselves from the language of charity, of recovery, of being called developing. Let us instead rise into something new and ours, where the waters that once divide us now unite us in dignity and prosperity. My dear brothers and sisters, our experience, guided by the spirit of Madamar, together with our collective innovations in energy, agriculture, digital technology, and knowledge, can be a bridge linking Africa and the Caribbean in shared prosperity. To turn vision into action, and building on the commitments of the first Africa Union CARICOM Summit, I propose bricks of unity built on 4 pillars of impact. First, agriculture and digital innovation. Advancing climate-smart farming, tropical crop research, and resilient food systems, paired with digital platforms, AI, and e-learning to amplify impact. Expanded renewable energy will green our farms, processing facilities, and trade. Second, innovation and collaboration. Creating hubs of entrepreneurship, digital infrastructure, and research, linking startups, universities, and institutions. That also means easing mobility, more accessible visas, expanded transport and logistics, making partnerships practical and possible. Third, culture and leadership. Expanding youth and leadership exchange, strengthening cultural and creative collaborations, not as a symbol, but as engines of identity, innovation, and opportunity. Fourth, knowledge and health. Building research networks to address tropical medicines, marine ecosystems, and climate, harnessing our collective knowledge to solve shared challenges and improve health outcomes. Through this bridge of unity, we link our universities, our economies, and our cultures, making distance no barrier to progress. Let us not be distracted by the challenges that surrounded us. Our regions have always faced adversity. What has changed is that we now choose to face it together, defining our own solutions and future. I thank each of you for your presence, leadership, and your commitment to a more unified future. I wish you all a fruitful summit. Enjoy your stay in Ethiopia. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the generous hospitality extended to our Excellencies, heads of states and distinguished delegates. It is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Terence Drew, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, incoming Chair of CARICOM, to deliver his remarks. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Good morning to all. Let me first of all recognize Your Excellency Abiy Ahmed Ali, Prime Minister of this great country, Your Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, President of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union. Let me also recognize Your Excellency Parfait Onanga Ayanga, Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General. Allow me also to recognize Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. And allow me to recognize also Her Excellency Dr. Carla Barnett, Secretary General of CARICOM. Other heads of delegation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. But allow me to also recognize, speaking on behalf of the Caribbean community, the Rastafari community of the Caribbean, who for many years has asked us to meet with our African brothers and sisters and forge a relationship that would ensure prosperity for our people. Today, as I stand here and came here by air, as I landed in this most beautiful country, it dawned on me that our history in the Caribbean did not start 400 years ago with the slave trade, but indeed we are connected to the cradle of civilization, the cradle of humanity, Africa, Ethiopia. It is indeed an absolute delight to greet you on behalf of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community at this second CARICOM Africa Summit being held in the Nelson Mandela Hall here at the headquarters of the African Union. Ethiopia, the land of origins, reflects the family ties and bonds shared between the people of the Caribbean community and the continent of Africa. While these linkages were forged from an exploitative and oppressive system that made a mockery of human rights, the Caribbean is proud of the strides made in strengthening these connections through Pan-African advocacy, the fight against apartheid, and closer social and cultural links between the people of Africa and the Caribbean, supported by the respective decisions of the African Union and the Caribbean community. Today's first in-person meeting, since we met virtually for the first time in 2021, is timely in reinforcing the bonds between Africa and the Caribbean, as well as in examining ways in which to deepen our partnership at the global and strategic levels. This will allow us to deepen South-South cooperation while fostering shared prosperity and affirming a common voice on global platforms, including on global peace, security, reform, and multilateral issues such as climate change. As we meet under the theme of transcontinental partnership in pursuit of reparatory justice for Africans and people of African descent, we are reminded of the important outcome from the first Africa-CARICOM summit hosted by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, on 7th September 2021. The Caribbean community expresses sincere thanks and its deep appreciation to His Excellency Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of this great country, not only for the excellent arrangements and hospitality to us here in Addis, but also for the commitment made with the Honorable Mia Ahmad Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, to hold this second summit. This engagement will allow for broader discussion on the 2024 AU-CARICOM Memorandum of Understanding and upscale engagement and linkages with people of African descent, particularly the strengthening of interregional economic partnerships and enhanced people-to-people ties. Convey thanks to His Excellency João Lourenço, President of Angola, person of the African Union, for the support given to this engagement. Excellencies, our discussions today should allow us to come to a common understanding and collaboration on a wide range of issues pertinent to our shared health, climate change, youth engagement, digital transformation and artificial intelligence, trade and investment, maritime and air transport, tourism, and cultural exchanges. What is clear is that closer collaboration between Africa and CARICOM is impatient. It's impatient of urgent attention and action in order to achieve positive outcomes for both our regions. Actions must be the underpinning sentiment of all that we do. Current global events demonstrate clearly that it is in the best interests of both Africa and the Caribbean to work together as developing regions. And I heard the word of my brother, President Ahmad, that we need to drop the term developing regions and convert that into something that represents what we are seeking to achieve. Commendations are due to Afreximbank, particularly under Professor Benedict Orama's leadership, as well as to numerous political and other leaders across Africa, who through concrete initiatives are encouraging trade, investment, cultural and sporting exchanges, and other collaborations between CARICOM and Africa. And I dare say that it has begun. To further propel our efforts, we need increased transportation linkages to reinforce our bonds, as our people should be able to travel freely and unabated to Africa and CARICOM. We need increased trade and investment, building on the experience, potential, and amplification of the culture, historical, and economic linkages between our regions. What was once a devastating tragedy for our people and for humanity, the transatlantic slave trade, should now be converted into the Atlantic Bridge, a bridge of hope, a bridge of advancement, a bridge that will ensure that our people take their rightful place in this world. Therefore, I call for more cooperation, more working together, and more advancement. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters of this great continent, we are happy to be home again. We have the opportunity to rewrite historical outcomes and to be champions of our own destiny. CARICOM remains, therefore, committed to the CARICOM AU partnership on this 5th anniversary of Africa-CARICOM Day, as we celebrate the enduring kingship and deepening partnership between our people, between the Caribbean community and Africa. Let us celebrate, but let this celebration be a demonstration of what we seek to achieve with this new, strong relationship that we are forging forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now have the honor to invite His Excellency João Lourenço, President of Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, to deliver his statement. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Sua Excelência Abiy Ahmed Ali, Federal da Etiópia e anfitrião desta conferência.
And the host of this meeting, Excellencies, heads of governments and states of African countries, as well as CARICOM countries, Your Excellency, under holders, Prime Minister of Jamaica, and Chairman of the Caribbean Community, representatives of our heads of states and governments, Your Excellencies, Antonio Guterres. We're here represented by Mr. Parfait Onyanga, Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Carla Barnett, Secretary General of CARICOM, the Caribbean Community, members of the diplomatic corps accredited in Addis Ababa, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's with great honor and deep sentiment that I wish to make this speech as the Chairperson of the African Union and to make several observations in this during this second physical meeting of representatives of members of our African Union and the members from our Caribbean community. Allow me to greet you warmly on behalf of the Federal Republic of to recognize Federal Republic of Ethiopia, to thank them for this warm welcome and allowing us to carry out this work at the headquarters in this wonderful city of Addis Ababa. We're meeting today not just because of historical reasons, but basically because of the common determination that we do have to transform and to work on the wounds of the past and to build bridges of cooperation and to also seek justice. On the 7th of September of 2021, because of COVID-19, we held our first meeting virtually between Africa and during which our discussions, based on our discussions, we talked about the importance of the relations. And 4 years later, we are once again together. We are going to seek to make this meeting an important moment for us to be able to deal with global issues and to deal with global issues that affect people of Africa and African descent, so that we can be able to affirm our dignity as we work together to make efforts in order for us to have political cooperation, economic cooperation, social and cultural cooperation, because of our common history and the blood connection that we do have that unite us. During the second meeting, which has the theme, Transcontinental Partnership in Pursuit of Reparatory Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations, we acknowledge the fact that based on the theme of this summit, it has a very strong symbolism because of the African Union itself has consecrated 2025 as the year of justice for our people of Africa and African descent, a year of justice through reparations. And so we do have a common front in the transcontinental partnership that we do have between the African Union and CARICOM, because as we fight together for reparative justice on a global level, we need to find a way to evolve in the decisions that we to achieve our objectives. And with this goal, we consider it to be fundamental for us to be able to think about ways in which we can create common grounds in the use of available tools so that we can be able to achieve reparations and use Afro-Caribbean mechanisms so that we can be able to get reparative justice on a global level. These tools will become facilitating instruments so that we'll be able to have collaboration between the African Union and CARICOM organs so that we can be able to define strategies, aligning policies, and carry out effective actions collectively so that we can be able to achieve reparations on a political as well as a legal level. Excellencies, this summit truly is an opportunity for us to be able to reflect on the facts, historical facts that unite us, and the need for us to think about our common action so that we can be able to have action that will reinvigorate our efforts, and so that we can be able to deal with the suffering of the past caused by colonialism. For that reason, we will have to look for a common path which will lead us to progress and development, and for the well-being of the current and the future populations of Africa and our African descent, so that we can be able to break the cycle of poverty, which unfortunately still affects our countries and our regions. We note with a lot of satisfaction that there is a dynamism that we need to, that will lead us to be able to believe in our common objectives, and in this aspect in particular, I'd like to talk about the important progress that we've had through our cooperation, which for that reason we do have the Afro-Exim Bank also operating in the Caribbean region. This is an important step that brings us together, which opens new opportunities for us to be able to have commerce and investment, so that we can be able to carry out Afro-Caribbean forums for investment and trade. And we are working on this, and so which will bring together businessmen and government leaders from different regions, and also which follows signing on September 2024 of a memorandum of understanding between the African Union and the CARICOM. That is going to strengthen the cooperation in strategic areas such as trade, transport, education, science and culture, and mutual support as we deal with global challenges. We still haven't strengthened fortified our commitments, but we have identified our priorities. We've defined a roadmap which is clear, which will lead us very quickly to establish a joint platform of communication, media communication, signing of multilateral accord on air transport services, and as well as provision of visas. We need to review the visa regime, existing visa regime between Africa and the Caribbean region, so that we can have public-private support, so that we can mobilize resources, and so that we can be able to facilitate contact between Africa and the Caribbean region. We need to put a lot of effort so that we can be able to implement our decisions and transform our decisions into actions, concrete actions on behalf of our people. And that is going to be a base for strong interchange, and which will strengthen our cooperation and improve our economic state, stimulating economies and support areas such as energy and digital technology, agribusiness, and industrialization. On the cultural level, we want to deepen educational exchanges, artistic exchanges, so that we will be able to strengthen our shared identity in a way that we can be able to give strong voice to our young people, to the universities, as well as research institutions, scientific institutions, as well as cultural organizations in the diaspora. Excellencies, we do have clear objectives. And for that reason, we need to seek to establish mechanisms which will facilitate their implementation. And for this reason, I propose that we create a technical subcommittee which will work on a technical level, which will bring together representatives from African Union and CARICOM, composed of specialists, ministerial representatives and partners, and as well as representatives of our civil society organizations, as well as the private sector. They need to base their work in areas of common strategic interest, and make a concrete proposal so that we can be able to stimulate investment in the production of vaccines, in agricultural innovation and other sectors, so that we can be able to support our common development. It is important that we work in a coordinated manner so that we can be able to carry out reforms that will help us to change the global economic architecture, so that we can be able to have more justice when it comes to debt and in the use of financial resources, so that we can be able to carry out structural projects which will bring progress in Africa as well as the CARICOM region. In all the strategies that we're going to have, the youth should have a central part, and for that reason, I consider it to be pertinent that we find a way to institutionalize a youth council for African Union and CARICOM as a permanent consultative organ, so that we can be able to make sure that the future generations participate in the construction of our common future. Excellencies, we're living at a time which is marked by a lot of changes on a global level. We do have a climate crisis, food insecurity, energy insecurity, and also geopolitical instability, forced migrations, as well as external economic pressures. These are challenges which are really affecting in an intensive manner countries of the global south, particularly countries in Africa and the Caribbean. And so for that reason, we need means and resources for us to be able to deal with these phenomena. The fact that for that reason, we have to think about the current fragilization of multilateral institutions, which is quite worrying when it comes to the way Africa and the Caribbean treated. And so for that reason, we need to be able to have stronger cooperation, so that we can be able to defend ourselves, and also have comprehensive multilateralism, so that we can be able to raise our people and our nations, and to avoid, so can we deal with the marginalization that Africa and the Caribbean regions have always been exposed to. For that reason, we need to work in a very coordinated manner. We have to converge our efforts, and we will definitely need to have a reform of the United Nations, particularly the Security Council, and it needs to reflect the reality of today's world. And we also need to have equilibrium based on geopolitical realities, and it needs to carry out its role as a guarantor of global peace, and which is not the case at the present moment. Based on what I've just talked about, I consider that African states and Caribbean states need to seek to jointly defend multilateralism, which is able to respond to the contemporary challenges when it comes to peace and security, climate, as well as sustainable development, guaranteeing strengthening international institutions so that they can be able to have a representation which is representative of the aspirations of the people, namely the people who are excluded in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Asia, and the Middle East. I'm sure that this summit will represent a determining point which, going forward, Africa and the Caribbean is going to be able to achieve a lot, because the words of hope which are going to be made during this summit, they're going to be a base that will help us to achieve our destiny for the people of Africa and CARICOM. That way we will be able to achieve prosperity, well-being, and progress. So I take advantage of, use this opportunity to recognize the people of Palestine, to recognize the tough moment that they're going through. They are dealing with a real genocide. The world is not indifferent to your suffering. We are in solidarity with your cause, the cause for the fight for the creation of the state of Palestine, so that the two people, the people of Israel and Palestine, need to live in peace and harmony, developing friendly and ties and having economic cooperation. With these words, I declare open the second summit of the African and CARICOM region. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency, for your insightful statement. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the family photo. I kindly request that heads of state, heads of delegations, and those invited to the high podium to follow the protocol team to the designated location for smooth organization. I kindly ask that all other delegates remain seated until the photo session is completed. After the family photo, the sessions will resume here in this hall under the guidance of the chairperson of the African Union. I thank you for your attention and wish you fruitful deliberation.